Here's another one for you as well. I've seen scams that know I'm called Lewis. No, they'll know my email address and my name. It's like this is like because like that was another obvious one that you'd know. Like, if it says "Dear User," scam, get rid of
Yeah,
it. If it says
exactly.
"Dear
Yeah.
Lewis," it's like I don't know, you know.
Okay. What you were thinking about this week, Liz?
Okay, so yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm glad I didn't choose that one as my topic because that probably would have lost a bit of background reading. That was mental, by the way. But anyway, somewhat later, I suppose. I want to talk to you about scams. So and particularly
Somewhat later.
yeah, somewhat and particularly um scams that are either enabled through technology or like the internet or online or that type of that type of feature. Not like your traditional phone call scams. More like phishing emails, for instance.
Right.
Um, because basically, it just this week I got a text message, and it was from a company that claimed to be DHL, the delivery company, and
All right.
it had two separate typos in it. For one thing, but so
Well, you
that
know all
wasn't
about
really,
those.
and yeah, exactly. And I'm like, that's a typo. I've made one of those before. So that wasn't a good example. But the one I had before that, um, it was I think maybe Apple or something like that. And I remember looking at it, thinking to myself, I was like, when the fuck did these get so damn convincing? These are like I'm very curious to know your opinion. This because when I was younger, like phishing emails, they're the type of thing that like anyone that uses the internet knows what to expect. But these days, I consider myself somewhat tech aware, and there are like messages I'll get in my phone or like an email, and I'll be like, "Can I trust this? Is this like when the hell did this happen? When did normal people start getting duped by this shit?" Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I assume you know the type of the scam I'm talking about here.
Yeah, I've had a couple of texts over the last couple of weeks as well that I've had stuff like this. One of them was claiming to be like the bank HSBC. Now
Yep.
I knew it was a scam because I don't bank with them, so it was quite obvious. I just reported it as spam and left it.
Mhm.
But I've actually got quite a specific story about scams recently
Okay.
that affected me in quite a big way. And that's at the place that I work at. There was someone in the company had opened a phishing email on a personal email account, and I don't know how this happened, but the person was logged in on a company computer at the time, and because they clicked on a phishing email, a virus or something got uploaded to our
Shit.
servers, and it was like the day before the Christmas holidays. I take 2 weeks over Christmas, and it was the day before. I got a text at 9 a.m. in the morning, and it was like, "Do not log into your machine under any circumstances," kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so apparently they just like ripped through the servers and they got a bunch of like information out of it and stuff like that. And our computers went back online for like 3 weeks.
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we basically spent a lot of time like not doing any work, and it wasn't just our organisation as well. There was quite a few. We work quite closely with an environmental agency in Scotland called SEPA. They were attacked
Okay.
as well, and
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of the organisations around Scotland like had this cyber attack, and it was a massive thing over the Christmas break anyway.
Mm-hmm. That is a great example. Like I'm sure you've seen it as well. Like when I we can talk about this for now because this is a really good example of a scam, and that's like the whole like social engineering scam, isn't it? I take it. At work we every once in a while we have to do a bunch of like online courses, and I think I've done like three already, which are like on social engineering and like things to look out for this scam. Like if you see, and there's a lot of obvious things, but it's basically don't fucking click on links that you don't know what they are, particularly if
Yeah,
they work computer. It's because like this is the type of thing that you've proven it exactly there. Like one person clicking on an email put two massive companies out of not out of business, but like just floored them for three
yeah.
weeks. Because of one email. That's the type of thing I'm thinking to myself, like when the fuck did this happen? I don't remember things being this, but I have a similar story, but it's like, well, because it involves a business that suffered from a scam because it was my dad's company, and it was back in 2000 and maybe like 13, maybe just like pretty much just started high school, and it wasn't through phishing. It was through I think it was like through a data breach, and someone managed to get access to the company's email address, and it was like the classic one where they just like block out the person that owns the email address and sends an email to all contacts saying that I'm going under some really hard times right now. You know, my wife's in the hospital. Could anyone give me some money? Just for, like, ask for sympathy, basically. And like they basically sent this to all of the company's business contacts. So obviously, immediately folk firing up. It's like, what the fuck's going on, Jim? Like, you okay? You okay? And nobody did end up sending money. There were a couple of people that phoned my dad, and they were actually like, "Hey, man, if you need some money, give me a shout, and I can help you out." But no one actually like clicked on the fucking PayPal link and just says, "Oh, here's £100," you know.
Yeah.
But like that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like this is that's almost like an example of where we were versus where we are now. You know,
Mm.
like I remember when I was younger, the classic scam was it's called an authorized payment scam. It's basically like the, you know, I'm a Nigerian prince and you have an inheritance of £2 million. Can you pay me the interest and I'll give you the rest of it? And it's called an authorized payment because the idea is that you are fully aware that you are paying for this. You're not being stolen from. You're just being scammed into
Right.
getting rid of this money. And that was like the standard for internet scamming, you know. And like you'd like read an email and it'd be like someone had just typed it, you know, and like they clearly English was like their third or fourth language, you know. And like it was like it would just say dear user, or like it would just be like hiya type of thing, you know, or like it'd be from an email address and it'd be like a bunch of complete gobbledygook. So like for most people that had half a clue, recognizing these things was like blindingly obvious, you know. Like, and I remember at the time thinking to myself when I was like quite young, I genuinely believed that eventually phishing scam emails like this wouldn't exist in the future, because I was like, these must just be targeting the old people that don't know how to use a computer, right? This is just for people that click on everything they see. Eventually the world's going to become educated enough that this will become like a thing of the past. But what was really interesting was when I started researching this topic was actually within the last like 5 years, scamming, particularly internet and online scamming, has become like a massive problem. It's become much, much worse. And as much as more and more people are getting access to phones and smart devices and emails that are knowledgeable, and like more young people particularly that have been like growing up with this stuff, still more and more people are falling victim to these scams. Uh, and once I tell you, it'll be pretty obvious. But can you imagine, for any particular reason, and why maybe in the last 1.5 years there might be an increase in scamming?
Um. Oh
Prince
well.
Prince March last year.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking COVID. I'm trying to think
And you think
why.
why though? Because that's the juicy part, the really interesting part that I think I want to that which I think I want us to focus on.
Yeah. I don't know, because they're working from home. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I think the most obvious one is that once the world locked down, everyone was in home more, and that meant that they were less likely to be out doing things. They're not going to be going to a shop to buy something. They're not going to be meeting a business in person to do an interaction. They're not going to be they're just doing everything online now, you know. So you're making more profiles, you're making
Mhm.
more accounts, and you're doing like your shopping online. So at the end of the day, there's like a much, much larger presence online now. So from that perspective alone, it makes sense that you would expect more people to be falling for scams just because the population's higher,
Well,
just through sheer statistics, right?
yeah. When lockdown first started, I remember a couple of months into it, thinking to myself that crime's probably at an all-time low right now because
Right,
no
yeah.
one's out in the wilderness. But I guess it makes sense that criminals, instead of doing things in the real world, would move to doing these things like online. As people
Mm.
were like accessing online, they were at home as well. They would start. I think there's people that do things that are like illegal to make money, and they'll just always do that, and they'll just find ways to make money illegally. And
Mm-hmm.
over the course of lockdown, it would have been online, scam people.
Well, I think it's like it's opportunistic, isn't it? It's because
Hmm.
it's not just as simple as there were more people using this, therefore the 5% that would have fallen from scams is now a bigger number because there are more people using the service. The scammers realized that more people were moving online. So basically what you saw was that these like scamming groups like increased their efforts tenfold at targeting scans for an online environment now.
Hmm.
So this is why, like over the last couple of years, it's almost as if there's been like a massive increase in the quality of the scams that you're encountering. Like, see, for instance, like see see when you get like an email from PayPal, and it'll say like, we've noticed suspicious activity on your account. Please log in here, or like press this link to da 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 da. It's like, we know the obvious ones to look for now. We know that if there's a spelling mistake, that's not PayPal. You know, we know if that's got a bullshit address, that's not PayPal. But there are things now that like oftentimes you won't see the address. Oftentimes the email itself will appear fine. You know, like it's become much less obvious now. And basically what I'm saying is that like these scammers are realized that there was like a new market opening up. You know, there was so much extra money that could be shaved from the online market. So they totally and utterly like redoubled their efforts in this particular field. And this ended up giving rise to increased levels of sophistication that already on top of what already existed, right? So
Yeah, I think the scams have been kind of like this for a while though, right? Like I feel like I've been receiving, if I've ever received like an email scam, and to be fair, a lot of it goes to my junk inbox. You know, I think email's like pretty good at recognizing what is and isn't spam.
same.
But like the things that when I have been scammed, you know, specifically when it's like when tax year's coming around, like April time, and the HMRC, like you get an email from the HMRC that says you're owed this much money in tax. Like I always think to myself, like, if I ever ask a question about an email, it's just probably like it's probably false. You know, if I see something and I'm like, why would this be in my inbox? I'm like, oh, it's a scam, and I just like throw it away. It's like not immediately obvious to me that this is a scam, but I find myself like finding something weird about it. You know, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this definitely isn't right.
Well, that that's totally. I think that's what people should do. You know, see if something's wrong. See if like you don't know why you've received an email, and you probably shouldn't have received it. You know, the
Right.
problem is that it's like the problem is that the sophistication is growing much better now. Like for instance, every Christmas, and like this isn't that like you're saying like how long is it? I don't think this has been going on for long, man. Like I don't know when I noticed that these scams were becoming much more sophisticated, but it's not been long because it's only been the last couple of years that
Yeah.
around about Christmas you start being flooded with like the you've missed your delivery package, you know, and like these are just like a really common one, and it's one of those things where it's like it's no longer just idiots that are getting caught out by this. This is like normal people. Like, do you know anyone that's fallen a victim to one of these scams?
Not off the top of my head. No, I don't think so.
But I know one person, and don't get me wrong, they weren't like tech savvy or anything like that. But it's like a middle aged normal guy. You know, he's not like an elderly person who doesn't know how to use technology. He has like a smartphone, but he fell for it. He like clicked the delivery link because he'd ordered something online, punched in his details, and all of a sudden like they had access to his card information type of thing. And that's like that's not the type of thing that for me that must be very hard to say with any degree of certainty that that's clearly a scam. Like for instance, in this scenario, I would know that if I was given a link and it was a text and I was like, shit, I do have a delivery. It's like, it actually could have arrived. I'd probably click the link, I admit, and then I'd go into the page and I'd see if it had like, you know, HTTPS, just see if it's a secure website type of thing. And then I'd like try and like do a bit more digging. But this is asking a lot of people, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
sure. Yeah. I mean, looking at, I wouldn't have even known that HTTPS would tell you that. I didn't even know that. I probably would have just gone home and like checked if I'd got like a card in the door.
what dude, that's the thing. HTTPS used to be a way that you could guarantee because basically HTTPS means it has a secure connection. It's like encrypted or whatever, and it's
Okay.
just like an extra layer of security. And even like a year ago, I think maybe 2 years ago, it's so difficult to remember. Even like a couple years ago, it felt to me as if like if it didn't have that, then that's a scam, and if it does have that, that's the correct website. You know that for an absolute fact. But these days, I've been going to some websites that have that. It's like, how the fuck are they getting that? Here's another one for you as well. I've seen scams that know I'm called Lewis. You know, they'll know my email address and my name. It's like this is like because like that was another obvious one that you'd know. Like, if it says "Dear User," scam, get rid of
Yeah,
it. If it says
exactly.
"Dear
Yeah.
Lewis," it's like I don't know. You know, this is worrying me, man. And I figured out how that they're getting more information on you, and this is another result of like the increasing technology, and it kind of comes down to what you're talking about earlier on with like that ransomware and this concept of breaches, because basically we live in like a day and age now where you can easily I mean, really, really simply, if you're in the right circles, go onto the dark web and buy a database of names and passwords and IP addresses. You know, like you're, and that's why I know that my information is currently on the dark web. It's because I've been given a spam email that says, "Hello, Lewis." That's protected information. That means that that has been breached at some point through a data breach, and that was probably through some sort of phishing attempt. And now that they are using that information that they've breached to then make more sophisticated scams to try and lure me in even more, right?
Yep.
Like this is what I'm saying. Like we're gotten to the stage where it's just like crazy, crazy levels of technology. So that's just that's just like the basic, the straightforward enough ones. Like there's more people online and they're getting better at it, so there's more people being scammed. There's a couple more interesting ones that are particularly related to COVID that I'd probably like to cover as well. Apparently, romance scams went up 22%.
Yeah,
And
we feel it. We're all lonely, man,
I
especially
fucking
during COVID. Yeah,
I'm not at
I
all
get that.
surprised because that's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking to myself. Like we're talking about, like it makes sense to imagine that the number of scams would go up because there are more activity and there are more targeted attacks against these people. But COVID had like a detrimental effect on the psyche of the world. You
Mm-hmm.
know, people felt horrible and lonely. So like you saw investment scams going up because interest rates plummeted and people were worried about money. So all of a sudden people are getting scammed out of interest. You saw romance scams going up where people are like, meet me on the first date, you just give me some money before ahead of time type of thing, and folk are like, okay, I'll just send you this much money. Like idiots. But people, when they're in a really bad place, they do these type of shit. Pet scams, once we put a down payment on a dog, then you turn up and there's no dog. Like these, because like people just wanted some fucking company because they're trapped indoors. Like there's been like this rampant onrush of scams that are becoming. And these are all like the pretty straightforward ones that have just been that have just been like. Basically, what I think's happened is you've taken like the same fundamentals that are always been applied, and like exactly like you said earlier, these scam artists have just applied it to the new climate that they
Mm-hmm.
find themselves in.
Yeah.
So what we're actually seeing is like the same tactics as always, just reapplied. For instance, like they always give you a false sense of urgency. Please collect your parcel or reply to this email within 24 hours. They'll always pretend to be an authoritative figure, for instance, like government, or they'll try to like track and trace because people just have this natural proclivity to believe what the authority says. These are the exact same traits that have been used against human beings for centuries. It's just that now it's being applied to our technology, and with like the compounding technology, complexity of the technology in place right now, we're seeing how this is becoming much more sophisticated, and how I'm kind of worrying about where we're going to be in like 10 years from now, right? Because like how presumably data breach users are going to get worse and worse. We have
Yeah.
no reason to believe that they're going to stop anytime soon. As a matter of fact, we have reason to believe that it might get worse because the people that are, as much as the people that are putting security up are getting more sophisticated security, the people that are attacking are coming up with more sophisticated attacks.
It's my turn to put my tinfoil hat on, Lewis, because
No way!
yeah. I know. I'm taking your hat away from you, and I'm putting it on myself right now. Okay,
Go on,
sorry.
it looks great on you.
Yeah. So this is the reason why I've told you like several times. I know I'm in the process of like trying to buy a house right now, and this is the reason that I want my like money not to be in a bank account, because I don't know why, but I'm just convinced as of late that one day the bank or someone is going to turn around and say, "See all that money you had, and now it's now worth nothing." Like
Yeah.
it now means nothing. Like I hear about these stories all the time. Like my granddad told me a story about how he had like a bunch of shares in a company, and in 2008 when the market crashed, all of his money just like disappeared. He had
It
like
was gone. Yeah,
it was
it's
like
gone.
£15,000 in like shares, and then all of a sudden it was like you have £300 now, and it's like, how does that happen? So I'm just super worried that like one day there's going to be a scam, or there's going to be security breach, and someone's going to be on the computer and my account's going to say XXXX, and they're going to press delete and they're going to put zero next to it, and I'm going to be like I don't know, man. I'm just
Yeah,
fucking worried about it. I'm
I
worried that
understand.
the money, because that isn't actually like real money. It's just a
No,
number on a screen.
yeah.
That
It's like a number
apparently
in our
is how much
database.
that apparently is how much I'm worth.
Mm.
So can someone just go on and delete the record like can someone just press like it's like an Excel spreadsheet, someone just
Yeah.
says delete and like any money I've ever owned is just gone? Can that happen? I don't know.
Well,
But if I've got a house, they can't say like I'll have the deed to that house, you know, and I'll be living there, and they can't say no one can go into my bank and say that doesn't belong to him because I have the deed, you know. I'm just
mm,
fucking worried about it, man.
yeah. Well, I mean, like, this is a very very related story, and it basically applies to what you're talking about here because I have been scammed before, you know, and it wasn't one of the bullshit ones. It wasn't one of the bullshit ones where you just like you like give your details onto a website and like get your bank account details or whatever. I had like identity theft, and that was
Yes, of
yeah
course. I forgot about this.
yeah. So what the scheme, the scam, it's called Simswap, and I don't remember exactly if I explained the details to you at the time, but I will now anyway because it was years ago. I was this probably happened 5 years ago, so quite a long time. To be honest with you, it turns out at the time SimSwap was not massive. There was only like 144 cases in the UK that year, and this year I think there's about 800 so far. So it's a growing market. But basically, what happens is a scammer will back then what they would have done was they will basically trawl through your social medias in order to try and find answers to possible security questions. You know, they'll try and find out your mother's maiden name. They'll try to find out your pet's first name and your primary school. You know, like the obvious ones. And the thing is, it's actually quite easy to get this information from most people. These days, it's been taken a step further. It's because now people can actually trove through dark web databases to try and find this. It's because as much as there are databases which contain your name, your email address, and your IP address, there's also databases which contain answers to security questions. You know, it's fucking crazy. So basically, a hacker will get a hacker. Sorry, the scammer will get held in. I'm in. Well, once they have your security information, what they do is they'll phone up your phone company and pretend to be you, and they'll say, "I want to transfer my SIM onto I want to transfer my number onto a different SIM card. Can you please facilitate this for me?" They're like, "Oh, can you provide us with this code?" And I'm like, "Oh, I forgot it. Oh, I forgot it. Oh, I forgot it. Oh, I can remember one of the security questions though." It's like, "I know what my dog was called," type of thing, and they're like, "That's good enough." So what? And then like it's literally that simple. All you need is like the person that are phoning on behalf of the phone company or whatever of your phone provider to just give this person some benefit of the doubt, and then they give over operation of your number to this person. And basically, once texts that would have once been sent to you are being sent to them, they can get in wherever they want, pretty much.
Okay.
That's how they got into my bank. They got into my banking app because they said that I'd forgotten, they claimed to have forgotten the passcode and they wanted to recover the passcode with text recovery. So text recovery gets sent to the number that they have. And the thing as well is that as soon as they get this, the number, as soon as they get the SIM card, all of this information isn't being sent to my phone. You know, I don't know what's happening. So I'm just like sleeping in my bed and they are systematically going through my bank accounts, retrieving information, getting into my accounts, locking me out of those accounts by changing the passwords, and going through this data. And it's not only as simple as that. Like the thing is that I used Apple, therefore my photos were on the cloud and my notes were on the cloud. So they went through my notes, and me, being the fucking genius I did, had an app, had a page where I just kept a bunch of passwords. You know,
You fucking moron.
why the fuck would I think someone's gonna get into my notes by hacking into my fucking number? So basically, I was screwed. You know, like they got into my banking app, they got into my emails, they forwarded all my emails to themselves without making me aware of that change. So I didn't know that I was locked out of my emails and I wasn't getting any updates. I couldn't get into my banking app. I couldn't get into my phone, and they took every penny of money I had out of both my primary bank account and my savings account. And of course, like I woke up one morning. It's because as much as my phone didn't have SIM service, it still had Wi-Fi, and I basically saw like that there was no money in my bank account, and tried to phone up the bank. Of course, you can't phone up the bank because you no longer have SIM service. You know, like you are locked out of this fucking thing. Well, luckily, I was able to go to my parents, and use their phones. But very scary of this one very, very small weakness that you have. Like, it's just a phone number is all these people need, and your bank account can be emptied, you know. And just to add fucking insult to injury, most of the money was just like direct transferred into another bank account, but they spent around about £1,000 on a TV and clothes, you know. And then every 6 months after that, the company that they bought the clothes through sent me a magazine to my door just to fucking remind me. So
Just to rub salt in the
yeah,
wound.
salt in the wind. So it's crazy. The good news is, so as much as I'm saying that, yes, it's very, very possible for your money to go poof, poof and it's gone. The good news is that it's very much the bank's job, one, to stop that, but two, to reimburse you. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah, I would assume so. Yeah.
right. It's like, apparently it was something. Oh, I'm going to need to look up the fact later on. I'm going to take a
But
timestamp perhaps so I remember.
the thing that concerns me more about the idea that that's going to happen to me is the idea that that's going to happen to so many people that the bank will be like, we can't give you all the money back. It's gone.
Yeah. Well, dude,
Kablamo, you're done.
if that happens, you don't need to worry about not having money. You need to worry about the fall of civilization.
Okay.
If banks can't pay back people, then we are fucked.
Yeah.
To so many levels. It's like
Well,
hard to even think about.
I won't have to worry about the fall of civilization.
You'll
I'll
have a
have my
house.
house.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll have a roof over my head. The heating will be on. I'll be sipping a pina colada in the living room. People
Oh,
will be
yeah.
like, I've no money left. I'll be like, mine's is all in the house. I'm patting the walls.
Look at these walls. Yeah, these are mine. Yeah, good luck with that, man. I tell you. But it's
Good luck hacking through these.
you're just like looking out the window. Scott, the world is burning.
I'm
So
sitting
it's-
watching reruns on Netflix.
Yeah. No, well, so it is an interesting idea of looking at it like that. You're right. But trust me, man. The good news is that apparently, like, banks in 2020, they stopped like 65% of scams. They actually stopped them in their tracks. It's because the banks are like, as much as I'm talking about how much worse they're getting, and there's also been like trends of scams getting more money from people as well. The banks are definitely getting much better and more sophisticated at identifying scams, and the way that they do this now isn't even. They don't even like. Okay, sorry. Go back like 30 seconds. The reason that online and technology enabled scams are like so brilliant is because most of the time it doesn't involve any interaction through the bank. You know, like most of the time it's just like an online payment, and that would usually be the stage where a bank would intervene. But that's obviously not the case. Now banks are developing algorithms that are able to look at transactions on a global scale, and just through like machine learning and algorithms identify what's suspicious. You know, like, I don't. Have you ever had any of those like scam alerts that you're trying to buy something online? It's like this is an unauthorized purchase. Please phone your bank.
I get it sometimes when like I pay for when I do contact lists at like 2 or 3 locations in a row, like quickly it'll be like there's suspicious
Oh.
activity going on here. Like, are you making these payments? If you are, ignore this. If not, like phone up.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I've had a couple of times I've had like there's suspicious activity going on, but it's always been me. I've always known what it is. Like I've gone to my app and I've like checked what the purchase was, and it's been me, so I've been okay.
Right. Okay. That's not so bad. I think I've had one of those emails before as well. Like, this is a suspicious activity. But I distinctly remember at the time thinking like, I don't fucking trust that email. I just like delete that. I didn't even. I checked my bank, obviously, but yeah, that's kind of like the. I can't remember where that tangent started when I started talking about the Simswap app. But basically, the point I was wanting to lead to was that sure, COVID has caused an increase in scams for like the aforementioned reasons. Like, people are having being psychologically damaged, as I'm sure everyone you're aware of, everyone's aware of, and in those scenarios, people make worse decisions. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Luckily, you've not lost every penny you own through to bad decisions, but people have.
The thing I'm wondering is what are banks and these organisations doing to up their security to stop these sorts of things? Because see, you think about in the past, you think about like laws that have been in place to stop bad things from happening. They're reactionary, you know. Like to take an extreme example, there wasn't an anti-nuclear deterrent before the nuclear bomb was created. You know what I mean? That's like
Makes sense.
it's like reactionary to put security in place. So it kind of concerns me a little bit that these scams will be evolving faster than security is, and they'll start like happening all the time, and it'll
Mm,
be like a reactionary change. I wonder what they're doing to sort of proactively defend people, if you know what I
yeah.
mean.
Currently in the UK does have laws on internet practice, and currently scamming is not involved in that documentation whatsoever. Like like safe practice online doesn't mention scamming, and just this year there has been a push for that legislation to be involved. It's because I totally agree with you. Like it seems that because people are using this environment more, then it's happening more often. There are many more attacks, and people are losing money because of it. And it has to be, we can't rely on the banks catching it. You know, there needs to be some degree of infrastructure in place, but I don't know how realistic that is. To me, it seems like the government right now does pretty much nothing. It's all handled through the banks. Like banks deal with fraud and scams. That's their whole thing. And there are like external companies, like financial overseers right now. But I think we rely on banks deeply in order to solve this issue for us.
I think the banks do a decent job at it though as well, because like every time I open an account or I do something at the bank or I go in to talk to someone,
Mm-hmm.
I always sit down at a table and they're always like, "We have to play this little video before we talk any further,"
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a video about how they'll never ask you for details over the phone or they'll never ask you for details like on email or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
if you sit down and like talk to your bank and actually read the stuff they send you, I think they do like a good job of explaining to you what the signs to look out for the real stuff. But obviously, there's a lot of people that just like skim over T's and C's and like don't read any documents and don't listen to the presentations and that.
Mm. Well, that's kind of that's where I think like so we've talked about some of the reasons that it's gotten worse over COVID, but I think some of the reasons we're just seeing a general increase in this type of behavior over the last couple of years is exactly because of what you mentioned there. As much as banks are doing a good job to try and make people more aware, we find ourselves in digital environments that are getting really complex now. Like think of the amount of accounts you have. Think of it like see when I get an email from Amazon, it's not out of the ordinary. You know, that's expected now. So like one of these scam emails, it's like they're relying on the infrastructure that we find ourselves in, and I think we can both agree, IT infrastructure is bogglingly complex. You know, it takes it, and we're very much like these scammers are able to take advantage of our ignorance when it comes to our understanding of this.
Oh yeah, I don't know about it at all. I'm probably one of the like for someone who's like grew up in this generation, like what are we Gen X or something like that, whatever we are.
Oh yeah, we're the last of the
Well,
millennials.
millennials, so that's what we are. Yeah, millennials. For someone who's grown up as a millennial, I'm probably very un-tech aware. I'm not good with computers in comparison to how people probably should be in at our age.
What? No, I think you're right. Both of us are not techies, but
No.
you and I, we are to an extent tech savvy,
Yeah,
like
I think we have to be because of how our educations went through, I guess.
yeah, like that's like when we're talking about identifying scams, you don't need to be like a tech whiz to understand you're being scammed. You just need
Hmm.
to know the indicators to look out for. But my problem is that, well, no, not a problem, but like the point I was making was that it's these are the small things that are now not enough. We're now at the stage where it's like the average person is being scammed. And like here, a really good example, because we've mostly talked about phishing. And by the way, you might not know this, but there's an official term for text phishing. It's called smishing. So that's nice.
Ah.
But yeah. So phishing and smishing, but these are like still old techniques, like the same thing that's been happening years. The only reason that they've changed is because they're becoming fancier, they're being done up more, they're able to have access to more information, which makes them more realistic. But we can't forget that there's also other scams going on that take advantage of IT and tech that are really quite complex. So like here, well, not complex, but there's one brilliant example which I read about. People will call it the Alexa scam. Basically, what scammers have been doing is that they've been making a fake website and pretending to be, let's say, HMRC in customs. And they'll pretend to make a fake website, www.hmrc, and they'll pay for like an ad in Google search. so that when you look up HMRC, that'll be the top result. If you were to then ask Alexa, Alexa, phone HMRC, apparently Alexa doesn't distinguish between an ad and a top search result. So
Oh.
what happens was that Alexa would put people through to scammers, and these people, it wouldn't occur to them they're being scammed. It's because they phoned them. It wasn't that this is a fucking cold call.
You know what?
Phoned
If you phone someone through fucking Alexa, you deserve everything you get.
Sure,
Fuck
especially
you.
especially
I'm talking
like
to
a
you,
fucking
the viewer, right now.
don't
Fuck
fucking
you.
yeah, especially HMRC. For fuck's sake, this is the type of thing that seems grossly negligent. But at the end of the
Alexa,
day,
transfer all my money out of my bank account.
yeah, to whoever I'm talking to right now. Yeah, so it's like there's an example of like tech being taken advantage of, and like people are sure, man, like people that are phoning important companies and having like serious calls, they're transferring money, they shouldn't be doing that over Alexa. I'm not disagreeing with you, these people are like fucking idiots, but it's like it's an example of, you know what, maybe I've changed my mind. Actually, maybe it's not getting worse. Maybe it is just the evolution. Like, it seems now that after I've done a bit of research, I think I'm actually decided to myself that like this is like a universal thing, and as long as human beings exist, there will always be people coming up with scams to rip people off, and the government will always be trying to catch up with them. And right now we're going through this boom with technology, like, because it's we've come up with a couple of solutions for how you could help this with like government intervention, but at the end of the day, it's just banks doing their thing. We don't have I don't know how much this is going to change. I think this is just going to be an ever continuing
Yeah, I
evolution.
think maybe you just have to rely on the fact that your bank will be able to protect you if this does happen. Like I say, I'm concerned that one day my money's just going to vanish, and not because I'll get scammed out of it, but because maybe the bank will literally just, something will happen, the market will crash, and all of a sudden my money's worth zero. That's
That would
more
be like the ultimate scam.
that's more of a concern for me. Not that somebody will steal it, but that the bank will one day just say, "Oh, you still have that money, but it's not worth anything anymore," or something along those lines.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. What you're talking about is definitely much more concerning.
yeah,
When I'm talking about scams, I'm not trying to say that someone's going to lose their house because they've been scammed out of their life savings. It's just more the fact that it exists and it's changing and getting better.
yeah. Especially when it comes to your money, I think there's always going to be criminals out there. Scams have like always existed, where someone tries to scam you out of like an insurance thing for, say, for example, you buy a phone and someone tries to scam you for insurance for it or something along those lines.
Yeah, always been scams.
Salesmen and criminals have always tried to do these scams, and obviously the government tries to like crack down on them as much as possible. There's no denying that they try and stop these things because scams are illegal. They don't.
Yeah, they're not getting money. They're not getting tax out of it.
Exactly.
So
The government's got a very clear incentive to stop that from happening. But when it comes to like your money and your property and things like that, I think you have a bit of personal responsibility to make sure that you know like what's going on, I guess.
yeah, you're right. There has to be a degree of personal responsibility. I guess what the interesting thing I'm pulling from this is that the dynamic's changing now. It seems like it's like younger people are getting scammed more. That's something that usually traditionally the
The
people that got
oldies.
scammed were the oldies. And like that, the interesting thing is that like the postal scams or like the doorstep scans, they're still happening. But like the old people are still being preyed upon from this. It's just that we've now opened up an entirely new market where people that previously were kind of immune to this kind of thing are no longer immune to it, and it's very much relying on people to have an awareness to this. So I guess I am at the stage now where I think that like governments should be making quite a concerted push to make the public aware of this. And I don't know about you, but I've seen evidence of that. Like, see, when you like go to the post office, you see like a wee sign on the wall, a wee banner that'll tell you like not to trust apps from an unintended number and that type of thing. There are pushes to try and make people more aware of it, but it's one of those things where the evidence tells us that it's still a growing market and there is more potential for these scammers to effectively scalp from people that currently exist, and it's just, yeah, man, it's something that truly fascinates me because it's one of those ones where it's like I just like finding out how the technology's made it better. Like the idea of people illegally obtaining information on you to try and like cater scams to dupe you. It's just like something quite amazing about that, you know?
It makes me kind of wonder, when I get these spam emails, like what I've obviously typed my email address in somewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
that somewhere they've managed to get my email address from that somewhere. It makes me wonder what organizations are doing that, because I don't feel like I put my email address in, just anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But they're obviously like selling on the information somehow. Somehow the information that I'm putting in somewhere is getting passed on to someone else, and it makes me wonder how that's happening, because it must can't be
Mm-hmm.
happening through the bank. I can't imagine my bank is like selling my information, right?
Well, I think we have evidence that data breaches happen much more often than companies tell us.
Right.
Like, see, like one of the biggest data breaches that ever happened. I think it might have been eBay, and they didn't tell the public until 1.5 years after the breach, until they had to tell the public. You know, like
Right.
this is like, I think I don't know if we'll ever find out or if people could ever find out, but once people start realizing the amount of information people have online, it will start really scaring them. Like, because I've talked about in the past on the podcast about how this information can get used for, like, for instance, like targeted ads, and I thought that was quite malevolent in itself. But now I'm starting to think about how criminals can access this information to target you for some type of crime like this, you know, and that I think is much more nefarious. Like, sure, I'll admit that like Google making you a radical by changing your search results might be a little bit tinfoil hatty, but the idea that the amount of information you have online is now becoming very dangerous in terms of like you being targeted for a crime, that's a real concern, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think as things like move online, and as the capability to get information becomes a lot more, I think you're right you're going to become more of a target. And like I say, it does make me wonder what proactive steps these companies are taking to try and like secure this sort of like information.
Mm.
Because I don't know, I just never. It absolutely baffles me that somebody was able to get your SIM card like swapped over, and it probably wasn't even that difficult for them. They had like some
Mm.
information on you that was able to get that to happen. Like how can they phone? Part of me almost thinks that it's the responsibility of the mobile phone company in that situation for them to have let somebody that wasn't you get through. That's a hole in their
Negligence,
security.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
not it's not your fault for having information on the internet to do that. It's their fault for allowing someone that wasn't you to change over your details.
Mm. I I definitely agree with you that companies that like hold information on people, they have to be much more accountable in terms of the security of that information than they currently are. I think like companies do get fined, for instance, like losing information through breaches. But like for the case of like when my phone company literally gave my identity over to a fucking criminal, nothing happened. The bank just paid out of their own pocket to exchange me for that. The criminal got away. Bank company they didn't even get a slap on the wrist. It was just like, oh, whoopsie, you know, that
We're
was all that
sorry.
happened. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, that was complete bullshit, and I would love to see companies kind of, you know, like fucking brought to heel for this type of shit. It's because it's like fucking Wild West, it seems, in a way out there. Like there are crimes that are not going punished. That, you know, I guess it's a difficult one, but
Yeah, no, I think if that's the case and your phone company's allowed to happen, I think your bank should have been able to claim that money back through the phone company, right? That should be. I feel like it's their responsibility to keep your shit on lock, And if
I guess
you,
so.
I don't like if you're saying they got through and they're like, oh, what's this number? What's that number? And they're like, forgot. It's like, well, if you
Hmm.
don't have this information, like we can't prove that you're you. Like we can't see your identification right now. If you forgot this shit, you need to come into the store tomorrow with your
Mm-hmm.
driver's license, and then we can think about doing that. But
Yeah.
it seems like that wasn't the case there.
I guess it's in no one's interest to do that right now. It's because the bank, their money is insured. You know, like they have insurance on money, so they're not actually going to, in terms of their profit or loss. they're not going to lose. Earlier on, I realized I said that they paid out of their own pocket. They didn't pay out of their own pocket. I think they paid an insurance company effectively
Sure.
paid for that loss. So they're not actually incentivized to like hound the people that did wrong here. The phone company themselves, they have absolutely no reason to then do anything about it. It's because like they didn't even lose a customer out of it, right? They just like a mistake was made. I don't even looking
You
back, I don't
probably
even
should have
know if
left that company.
yeah, yeah. I should have, yeah, but
Are
I
you
was
with
young
them now?
and no, 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 no. But it was like a contract that my parents paid for, and I was not getting my own. So
Oh, okay, fair enough.
yeah. So yeah, there was a good reason behind it. But yeah, I think that's something to key with it right now. Is that right now there's absolutely no incentive in place for any of the players within this system to stop it. It just exists, and it's like one of those unfortunate truths that doesn't need to be addressed. It's because it's
Mm.
like no, tell me if you think I'm right here. It doesn't seem to me, apart from like my mental well-being, no one was hurt out of this. Like the phone company wasn't hurt. I got my money back. The bank wasn't hurt because that was insured, and the scammer themselves made money.
I mean,
Like,
the insurance company would have been hurt because they would have lost money on the payout.
sure, yeah, but like that's their business model, I suppose. Like it involves paying out people, and like the amount that they will pay out will that'll be proportionate to the amount that they are paid each month for the service. So like that I guess like they lost out, but that's like losses they expected, I suppose, and they want those losses to keep happening, otherwise insurance companies won't have a reason to exist.
Yeah, it's all a bit of a fucking nightmare to be honest.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, I kind of I want to understand how companies are being proactive to like stop this kind of thing, or even if they are, I'm seeing a lot of that in like my work at the moment as well. And I don't know if you've seen the same at your work or not, but there's a lot of things at my job and at the place that I work where I'm like, this could all be so much better, but there's no immediate financial incentive to like do so. It seems like a lot of the things that like happen at work and in the sort of like spheres that are generating money, like
Mm.
in
Mm.
business and stuff like that, there's no drive to look at long term gain. There's only drive to look at like short term gain. So when you talk about nobody was really hurt in the short term there, it was really only you, and you didn't even like go somewhere else.
Mm.
The company's not seeing any like short term incentive to like do anything about that.
I
In
see
the
what you
long
mean. Yeah.
term, to get rid of like these scammers would probably be good because it'd be less time for salesmen, it'd be less time for people to deal on the phone and stuff like that. But there's no incentive for them to do it monetary wise, so they just won't.
Mm.
And I'm seeing the same thing in like not just in scammers and with banks and with phone companies, but in places that try to make profit. They sort of sacrifice long term generation of money for short term goals to keep stakeholders happy and to keep the profits like for that year tip top.
Yeah. That is something that I think is rife in the world. I have to say that the company I work for actually they are very thus far the time I've worked for them they're very good in terms of like long-term planning, and like for instance talking about like scammers and phishing emails, like we are constantly being like given these like educational courses to look out for it. There's like a full like cybersecurity division that works for the company. Like recently the latest thing is that like we used to use something called BitLocker so that if you had to use a USB it would at least be encrypted. So the idea was that people couldn't just steal information, or like a visitor couldn't just plug in their USB and take information off the computer. So it was a cyber security thing. Well, now all of our information storage is going to be in a cloud. We are not going to use any USBs at all. That every single computer is going to be blocked off. So that's going to be like one of those, we'll probably end up losing efficiency in the short term because of that, because like so much of our business relies on information storage, like every business does these days. But if you think about a couple of years down the line, they will be saving money, and I think that probably has something to do with profit margin, doesn't it? Like, see if a company's got a really slim margin, that's going to have less money in the bank to reinvest in long-term projects, whereas I guess a company that makes more money with sales, um that's going to be something that's much more easily implemented. So it's not even like the fault of these companies that do have these short term goals. It's systemic within like the system that they operate in.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. We have BitLocker as well at my work. We actually have to log into BitLocker to actually get onto the machine that we're using. They'll have BitLocker encrypted
Mm-hmm.
as soon as you turn the machine on, and you have to log into your account as well. And then you have to use a VPN to get onto the
Yeah,
server. So there's
yeah, yeah.
there's a bunch of layers to security, and somehow this
You still got
cyber attack they still got through one phishing email, which is quite incredible to be honest.
yeah, that does it really does put the whole thing in perspective about how the weaknesses in these systems, it's always the human element. You know, like we're talking about these scams and how they've changed over the years. Like the same things have been the same. It's not changed. It relies on the weaknesses of human beings. It's like their fear, their uncertainty, their willingness to conform to what an authoritative figure says. This is social engineering. That's exactly what it is, and that's what scamming has just become these days. It's become real applications of social engineering, and it's quite shocking when you think about like for instance your company, the ramifications of this, and
Yeah, I think
yeah,
about like the person that clicked on that phishing email. You know, they're probably just browsing their personal emails after a day's work or whatever, and something's come up along the lines of, you know, this is something's happened in your account, or you owe this amount of money, or
yeah.
you know, there's been suspicious activity or something like that. It's probably something that's got them really concerned, and they've just thought fuck, and they've clicked on the link, and then you know that's been it.
Well, not even like concerned. Like it could be innocuous enough that you just clicked on the link just to see where it brings you. And it's like, you know, like it doesn't even need to be a thing with like, immediate investigation. If they only need you to click that link, then oftentimes these emails leave it vague, don't they? You know, like another one of the social engineering aspects of this is that like they'll deliberately like they'll find out a friend of yours. They'll like pretend the emails from a friend and they'll say, "Oh, here's the file I went to send you earlier." That's it. You know, it's like they're like really fascinating ways in which they get around it, and I think the way that we're seeing it being implemented now is so much more sophisticated. And as I said earlier on, I think it's kind of impressive. But don't get me wrong, like see these scammers, they are scum of the fucking earth. You know, like I really, I have absolutely no sympathy for them whatsoever. I think they're absolute wanks, especially people that like deliberately target populations that are more vulnerable. You know, because like as we said, most people will not fall for scams because they're just savvy enough to realize. But there are populations of people out there that
The
are not
oldies,
savvy enough to realize
the
that. Yeah, like
oldies,
the
yeah.
oldies, yeah, the people with like mental disabilities. You know, like like
Mm.
these are very and kids. These are really vulnerable populations, and these are very much targeting the specific these groups. And I find it really heinous. The scanners actually scammers. It's weird. In one hand, I'm like totally fascinated by the craft, but at the same time, I just loathe these people for what they do. Um, so yeah, that's why I really wanted just to have a just a brief discussion about it. You know, I don't know how much we've learned from that, but I probably like hampered on a little bit at the beginning as well. But interesting to me anyway.
Yeah, you're right. I just agree with that final point that they are the scum of the earth, and they exploit real people. You know,
Mm.
people that regular folks that just fall for these things, and it's sad that people just don't know enough to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
10 episodes of this, 10 episodes in the books. Uh,
Epic, man.
yeah, hopefully 10 more. Good conversation. Excited to do more episodes with you, and hope people are still listening, still subscribing. Hit that
Yeah,
sub
yeah.
button, comment, like.
What's up, guys? Yeah, we've got a nice special for you next week. I'm hoping. Oh, should have done it this week for episode 10, but 11's fine. 11's kind of it's a pretty number in some ways. There's two ones there,
Yeah,
so
it's a big milestone as well.
yeah, yeah. And then 12 will be another big one. So
As each week is, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so catch you next time.
See you later, guys.